Okay. It's half an hour before my marketing class. And let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. No, we'll not talk about the Canadiens game today that is going to go on at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm not going to be able to watch that. I've got school, I've got final projects, and I have the Sockeyes later today for the PJHL. But let's do some housekeeping here, because yesterday I made a video about Shayne Gostisbehere trade rumors over to the Montreal Canadiens. We went over the different rumors that have gone on over the past few months, and we brought up the idea that Martin McGuire said on 98.5 Montreal radio the other day. We talked about Gostisbehere, we talked about the pros and cons, we talked about who Gostisbehere is as a player, and the type of impact he would have on a Canadiens team. However, it actually turns out that the Montreal Canadiens trade rumor side of things lies with a different defenseman on a different team. According to Elliotte Friedman here on his 31 Thoughts article from earlier yesterday, let's take a look at thought number 12 over here. Montreal took a long look at Alec Martinez before he was injured. The Shayne Gostisbehere rumors were denied. So, according to Elliotte Friedman, and according to Eric Engels too, he was on a separate little thing saying the same kind of thing here, the Shayne Gostisbehere and Montreal Canadiens rumors were shut down. Now, that's not to say that what Martinez said is entirely wrong, but it does bring up the idea that Gostisbehere wasn't necessarily close. The thing yesterday that we talked about said that the Canadiens and the Flyers were really close on a Shayne Gostisbehere trade. But taking a look at what Friedman has to say here, he brings up Alec Martinez, who is a Los Angeles Kings defenseman. You probably know him most famously for being the guy that scored the Stanley Cup winning goal in the 2014 NHL playoffs against the New York Rangers. Martinez is a 32-year-old defenseman who's been around in the league for a while but didn't really break out until that 2014 run. He was in the NHL a little bit here and there before that, and he did have a full season of play in 2011-2012. But in 2013-14, that's when Martinez really started to become great. That's when he scored the Stanley Cup winning goal. He had 10 points in 26 playoff games that year. Absolutely insane. But Alec Martinez, going throughout his career, has gotten a little bit better, has gotten a little bit worse, and today he's sitting there with a wrist injury. 24 games played and 5 assists in those 24 games. That's not great. And for a guy who is 32 years old, he's on a $4 million contract. He's not necessarily somebody that a lot of people would look at and say has a ton of value. Next year is his last year in his contract, 2020-2021, and then he will be a free agent. So the options for Alec Martinez going forward into the long term aren't necessarily well identified. Now, as for the Canadiens and their angle here, what exactly are you looking for with Alec Martinez? Well, you're getting yourselves a left-handed defenseman who could probably become one of your top left-handed Ds on the team. Now, again, on the Canadiens, that's not a tough job to do. But the fact of the matter is here, according to Friedman, Alec Martinez was the name that the Canadiens were looking after before he went out with that wrist injury. Now, just in case you didn't actually know, that wrist injury was really nasty. He got his wrist cut by a skate, and he had to have surgery to repair that. Now, obviously, there's going to be a timeline here, and they've already said that he's expected to be making a full recovery. But still, dude, getting your wrist cut by a skate in a play? Ugh, that's ugly. But what the Montreal Canadiens were looking to get out of Alec Martinez in a potential trade is a guy who could eat up minutes and play a pretty okay defensive game. Now again, it's not tough being the best left-handed defenseman on this specific Montreal Canadiens team. The left-handed depth isn't as nearly stacked as that right-handed side is with Petrie and Weber. But having a guy like Martinez who could eat up those minutes, who could play in a somewhat shutdown role, alongside of an offensive powerhouse like Weber, could potentially be a really nice combo. Now, again, Weber wouldn't necessarily be having the right players to feed him the puck all the time, but he's been kind of like that anyway, so yeah, he's been doing great besides the fact, so Martinez getting added to this team will just booster up that left side defense depth a little bit more. Now, that's not to say that Alec Martinez would be the ultimate be-all and end-all solution to the Canadiens' blue line. That's not to say that the Canadiens would become playoff locks with the addition of Alec Martinez, but it is saying that their chances of making the playoffs are quite improved. Now, obviously, you have to take a look at what the Canadiens would have been willing to give up in a scenario like this. And if you're taking a look at it, one for one, a D-man probably has to go back just because the roster moves and everything. The Canadiens would probably have to put in Martinez into their lineup and take a guy out. As a result, somebody would get sent over to Los Angeles. Maybe their Ontario Reign guys get a chance and somebody fills in that spot. But I think a defenseman has to go back, and obviously some value to match up with the value that Martinez brings has to go back as well. I don't know if it's a pick. I don't know if it's a prospect. The Habs have a lot of prospects, and they have a lot of picks, so there definitely is some room there. But I don't think the Canadiens would be willing to give up any other players on their actual roster. Aside from a left-handed D who is inferior to Martinez, I don't see it happening. Obviously, though, this trade and this talk is all for nothing because Martinez is indeed out with a wrist injury. But that is not to say that the Canadiens maybe won't entertain that idea once he comes back. Hey, he's expected to making a full return, right? So obviously there is some value there in talking about this. Martinez to me brings 1 or 2 more years of really solid defensive play. People have compared his game to Ben Sherratt, and you could say what you want about Sherratt, oh, the giveaways, oh, whatever, but take a look at the good things that Sherratt does and apply those onto Alec Martinez, because they kind of play the same game. So, going forward into the future, I wouldn't be surprised if his name popped up again in Montreal Canadiens related trade rumors, but at the same time, they're just trade rumors, right? The Canadiens' names are involved with so many guys. We talked about Taylor Hall several times on this channel and how the Devils maybe wanted to trade him and the Canadiens may be willing to give up a prospect or whatever. People have been saying Cole Caulfield, and that's absolutely nuts. Caulfield should not be traded. We talked about Shayne Gostisbehere yesterday, which was denied by Elliotte Friedman. But, you know, obviously, if it's coming from a source like McGuire on the radio, I would say that there is some legitimacy behind it, especially considering that that guy is a pretty trusted individual. We talked about other players in the past. We talked about Patrick Laine. That was huge. Remember the Laine to Montreal trade rumors? Then remember the Aho offer sheet that happened, which sparked up a whole bunch of other trade rumors once the Hurricanes matched? But yeah, there are a ton of trade rumors all the time about the Habs, but this one was in 31 Thoughts. So I think this one is a little bit more from a clearer source than some of the other ones. But ultimately, though, the Canadiens found themselves in the discussion for Alec Martinez. Does that guarantee that when he comes back, the Canadiens will be in him again? No, it doesn't, but I think there's a pretty good chance that they might be. As a result, the Kings will probably be looking for some younger guys. Some prospects, I think, because the Canadiens have a ton of prospects and the Kings have a lot of prospects that aren't necessarily doing too hot right now. The Kings are also building towards the future. The recent drafts have been great, getting guys like Alex Turcotte and getting guys like Tobias Bjornfot and getting guys like Gabriel Velarde, who just scored his first pro goal the other day, so mega congrats to him. But the Canadiens have a lot of prospects, and the Kings, they're looking forward to getting more prospects. So I think there's a clear-cut answer here when taking a look at what the Kings would demand in a trade scenario. And obviously, if you're a Habs fan, you don't want to depart with some of your younger talent, but at the same time, if you were going to go after somebody who was better than Martinez in a trade-like scenario, you'd have to give up more. And more is not something that Habs fans would be happy towards giving up, if I know Habs fans. So, overall, it's an interesting discussion to be had. Gostisbehere, nah, apparently that's not the case here, but Martinez was the guy that the Canadiens were indeed going after. So, I'm not sure how I'll market this video, whether or not I'll use the same thumbnail as I did for the Gostisbehere one, but just kind of change the face a little bit. It remains to be seen, but I gotta go to marketing class. That starts in about 15 minutes. Hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.